Order. We start with questions. Secretary of State for Wales, John Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number one, thank you.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2024, British residents took over 7.5 million overnight trips in Wales, and during these trips they spent a total of £2.24 billion. Wales's tourism sector is thriving, and this was clear to see on my honourable friend, the Parliamentary Under-Secretary's visit to Elan Valley Lakes last month, which will benefit from an £11.8 million investment from both UK and Welsh governments. And according to the Welsh Government, if a visitor levy were introduced by all Welsh authorities, it could potentially raise up to £33 million.
John Cooper.
Mr. Speaker, with the Welsh bottle deposit scheme going down the same disastrous dead end as the Scottish bottle deposit scheme, and now adding more costs onto Welsh tourism, making staycations more expensive, the government appears to be creating a hostile environment for business. And in the review of the UK internal market, meant to make doing business across this great land of ours easier, why is this government loosening the bonds of our great union?
Secretary of State.
Wales is the second best recycling nation in the whole of the world.
Right. So, Secretary of State, Mims Davis.
Oh, no. We're taking someone on this side.
Well, nobody's standing.
We got...
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, so attacking the Welsh hospitality sector with their disastrous tourism tax is supposedly a good plan, yet the Welsh Government's impact assessment warns of a potential loss of over £250 million of taxpayers' money. Meanwhile, last week, Labour pulled the plug on funding for the Western Gateway, a vital scheme focused on boosting Wales's economy. Can the Secretary of State now explain to taxpayers what the £205 million will actually do for Cardiff's airport, and does she regret both governments' decisions? As Mr. Speaker, today the CEO of Bristol Airport has openly voiced huge concerns about the Welsh Labour government's decision to spend this on Cardiff Airport with no obvious benefit or transparency, a move costing £300 additionally to Welsh households.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Investment in Cardiff Airport is a matter for the Welsh Government, and I recognise the importance of Cardiff Airport to the economy of the South Wales region, with thousands of jobs stemming from the airport and the economic ecosystem supported by it. Airlines like TUI and Vueling have recently added several new destinations and extra flights from Cardiff Airport. And in the light of the Welsh Government's sustained support for Welsh tourism, I'm delighted to welcome the news being made today that TUI is expanding its services at Cardiff with more new routes and an increase in flights to places like Tenerife and Mallorca.
Jill Jell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, Wales lost a musical icon with the passing of Mike Peters from The Alarm. Mike had an extraordinary relationship with his fans, and he brought thousands of visitors into the area from across the world for his annual event, The Gathering. Mike Peters, his warmth and his music put North Wales on the map for visitors far and wide. Would my right honourable friend join me in paying tribute to Mike and to the power that music has to bring people together like no other?
Secretary of State, I'm sure it will have an impact on the levy.
Yes, can I thank my honourable friend for her question. Music tourism is a huge part of the Welsh economy, visitor economy, and I was very sad to hear about Mike Peters' death. Mike and The Alarm were the sounds of my teenage years growing up in North Wales. He was a proud Welshman, a hugely talented musician and a man of incredible resilience. And as well as bringing music tourism to North Wales, he dedicated much of his life to charitable work to support blood cancer patients, and I know he'll be missed.
Brilliant.
Two, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I know this is a deeply personal matter for the honourable member, and I commend his committed campaigning on this vital subject. This Labour government agrees that more must be done to tackle violence against women and girls. That's why we've introduced a pilot just this week in Wales, which will enable victims and their friends, families and support workers to apply for a domestic abuse protection order, and have commissioned former Justice Secretary David Gauke to conduct an independent review to examine how sentencing guidelines can best address crimes of violence against women and girls in the future.
Just Barbara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I asked the government via a written parliamentary question how many domestic abusers there are in prison in Wales and what is their reoffending rate. The response was, it is not possible to robustly calculate the number of domestic abusers in prison or their reoffending rate because their crimes are recorded under the specific offences for which they are prosecuted. There is no specific offence of domestic abuse in the law, which means we're not recording this comprehensively, we're not rehabilitating comprehensively, not protecting victims comprehensively. So, what will the government do if it doesn't create an offence, as I have proposed, to protect those victims and survivors and better identify these abusers?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I understand that the honourable member is bringing forward a private member's bill, and we recognise that being able to identify domestic abuse offenders is critical. However, this government's not convinced that this bill provides a solution to that challenge. However, the Ministry of Justice will continue to consider how they can make improvements to how we identify offenders.
Chair of the Select Committee, Ruth Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow I will be visiting the new Sexual Violence Support Centre in Rothbury House in my constituency of Newport West and Islwyn, along with Jane Hutt, the Welsh Government Minister for Social Justice. This great new facility will support many people in my constituency and surrounding areas for years to come. So will the Minister join with me in applauding the vital work of the staff, many of them volunteers who provide life-saving support to women in need?
Well, indeed, I pay tribute to the organisation that my honourable friend mentions, and indeed the many organisations, the length and breadth of Wales, who help women fleeing domestic violence. And as she knows, we work very closely with the Welsh Government. Indeed, only yesterday I was speaking to Cabinet Secretary Jane Hutt, and as she will also know, the Welsh Government itself launched their own violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence strategy back in 2022 and are carefully monitoring progress on it.
Secretary of State, Member State.
The House will be as horrified as I am after learning from the shocking report in the Times that a Labour-led local authority apparently was showing a PowerPoint to teenagers where they were urged to seek consent from their partner before choking them during sex. It is abhorrent to even attempt to normalise strangling in a loving relationship, indeed any relationship. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that the council in question did not categorically deny this at first, but did so after the rightful backlash. Does the Minister agree it's such appalling that such appalling content, either shown or even considered to be shown to pupils in Welsh schools, should be totally unacceptable? And will she undertake to hold her colleagues to account on this part of the so-called Welsh curriculum?
Minister.
Well, indeed, it is very, very distressing to hear what the honourable member has to say. But what I would like to say to her is that the Independent Pornography Review is a wide-ranging and thorough piece of work which assessed the effectiveness of pornography legislation, regulation and enforcement. The review's final report was published on the 27th of February. And the findings of the review continue to be assessed by the government. It's right that the government take time to understand this complex and deeply important topic, and a further update will be provided in due course. And if I just may stress the point that the review recommends making non-fatal strangulation in pornography clearly and explicitly illegal to possess, distribute and publish.
Violence against women and girls, I think we can all agree, is an all too frequent occurrence. And the ONS's published data, which shockingly revealed 4.3% of women between 16 and 59 in England and Wales have suffered sexual assault in 23-24, up from 3.4% in 2009-10. Women and girls will only truly be safe if we rid society of the appalling rape gangs. A Welsh rape gang survivor has publicly called for an inquiry into this. Has the Minister met with the Safeguarding Minister to reflect this and deliver for victims in Wales? And if not, I ask again, on behalf of women and girls who want answers and to be heard and to see action in Wales and wider, will she push the Welsh Government to use the Inquiries Act 2005 to ensure Welsh victims get justice?
Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, the last government sat on their hands and failed to deliver on the recommendations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, whereas this government has already announced a comprehensive set of plans to implement all of the recommendations to prevent the horror of child sexual abuse, including the introduction of mandatory reporting, the creation of a new Child Protection Authority and the removal of the 3-year statute of limitation period for personal injury claims brought by the victims of child sexual abuse. And I would just stress, Mr Speaker, that this is a reserved matter and that my colleagues in government have frequent discussions with colleagues in the Welsh Government.
Alfred Brown.
Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, with your permission, I will take questions 3 and 6 together. Sorry. Just this morning I had the pleasure of visiting the Carmarthenshire Day in the Jubilee Room, which I would strongly recommend a real display of Welsh farming and food produce, Mr Speaker. So we are, as a government, steadfastly committed to the farming sector. We protected the farm budget at its current level and allocated £337 million to the Welsh Government at the autumn budget. Now, the Welsh Government in their budget have used this to maintain the basic payment scheme, providing much needed support for farmers across Wales. A budget, as she knows, that Tory and Plaid Senedd members have tried to block.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'd like to draw attention to my register of interests. Not only is Labour's family farm tax threatening the future of farming in Wales, it is indeed a direct attack on farmers right across the UK. In England, we saw the SFI scheme close with no notice. Meanwhile, in Labour's spring statement, they brought forward increases in national insurance, hitting all farmers once again, as well as their tax on double cab pickups, plus changes to furnished holiday lets, penalising farmers who have actively diversified. Can the Minister explain to the Welsh agricultural sector why this government is carrying out an all-out assault on their way of life?
Well, Mr Speaker, if I may just pick up on the point about the national insurance contributions. As she will know, many farmers employ 1 or 2 people, and as such, that is why they would come in the category of some of the smallest businesses, and we have made sure that we protect them by doubling the employment allowance to £10,500, meaning over half of small and micro businesses will pay less or no national insurance contributions at all. And if I may just point out that her Senedd colleagues voted against the budget for Welsh farmers in the Welsh Senedd only a few weeks ago.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Minister seems to have absolutely no grasp whatsoever of the constant struggle our family farms in Wales and across the United Kingdom are facing, both because of the lack of support in the Labour spring statement and also Labour's family farm tax. Farming families are not multimillionaires. They are striving to make a profit, with many earning less than the minimum wage. So will the Minister finally accept that farms are crucial to the UK's food security and the government should support them and scrap the vindictive family farm tax?
Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, we absolutely do applaud the work that farmers do, and they are vital to our food security. But as he will know, there are many ways in which we have supported farmers, including the £337 million money given to them in the budget this year and passed on by Welsh Government ministers to our farmers in Wales. And when he brings up again the issue of the inheritance tax, I would just remind him that we are maintaining significant levels of relief from inheritance tax beyond what's available to others and compared to the position before 1992. Where inheritance tax is due, those liable for a charge can pay any liability on the relevant assets over 10 annual instalments in interest-free.
Harris.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Welsh Government's budget contained over 300 million to support Welsh farmers. Is it not the case that Plaid Cymru and the Tories put Welsh farmers' livelihoods at risk by voting against the Welsh Government's recent budget?
Minister.
My honourable friend is absolutely right.
Question 4, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We are negotiating a new partnership with the EU and believe that securing a broad-based security partnership, closer cooperation on law and order and tackling barriers to trade will boost our economies, keep us safe and improve families' finances. Since coming into government, I've worked with UK and Welsh Government colleagues to drive over £1.5 billion of private investment from the likes of Erin Holding, Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners into Wales, creating hundreds of jobs and laying the grounds for thousands more.
Mr Speaker, only this government can deliver cold comfort and warm words all in the same sentence. The fact of the matter is that after the Labour-Tory hard Brexit, the Welsh economy suffered by £4 billion, trade's gone down by £1 billion and Wales has lost £1 billion in European structural and development funding. Then on top of that, the Labour budget has kicked them even further down the track. When will she stand up to her Westminster masters and finally do something in the interest of the people of Wales?
Seriously.
Mr Speaker, Welsh businesses, both large and small, tell us time and time again they are being held back by red tape, and we need to tackle the barriers to trade to help drive the investment, jobs and growth for both the UK and EU economies. Nationalists can continue their obsession with the Constitution, putting up borders, not breaking down barriers and raising taxes on working people like they've done in Scotland.
Jessica Moore.
Speaker, closer collaboration between the UK and the EU on defence and on defence spending is a very important part of strengthening our relationship, and also will be important for the Welsh economy, including companies like Enesis, who I visited recently, who produce specialist batteries for defence and other applications. So can the Secretary of State say a bit more about how increased defence spending will aid the Welsh economy and companies like Enesis, particularly in advanced manufacturing and in supply chains?
Seriously.
Can I thank my honourable friend for her question? She's absolutely right about the potential for growth. This government's commitment to increase defence spending means that our strong defence manufacturing base in Wales and the skilled jobs it supports has real potential for growth. The top 5 suppliers to the Ministry of Defence all have a footprint in Wales, and alongside that is a strong supply chain. And the forthcoming industrial strategy will set out more details about how that advanced manufacturing base will get government support.
This is Roberts.
Reports of a new UK-EU strategic partnership to reduce trade barriers will at last be a welcome boost to Wales's food and drinks producers, given that 75% of the sector exports go to the EU. All producers from farm to fork of our wonderful Welsh produce make a vital contribution to Wales's economy. So will she join me in celebrating all of Wales's food producers and farmers, especially those at Sioe Nevin Show on Monday, and even more so those from Sir Gar, Carmarthenshire here today?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm delighted to support the Welsh food and farming industry and absolutely concur with her comments.
Roberts.
On another note now, policy and practice show that 10 UK local authority areas worst hit by Labour's welfare cuts, nearly half of them are in Wales. That's 190,000 people in Wales affected, hitting our post-industrial quarrying and coal mining communities hard. How does she explain to her colleagues in Wales why the communities where Labour used to be strongest should now suffer so much because of her government's cruel welfare cuts?
Mr Speaker, she might know that none of those reforms have actually gone into effect yet, so nobody has been affected by them. But we have inherited a Tory welfare system that is the worst of all worlds, the wrong incentives, discouraging people from working, The people who really need a safety net still not getting the dignity and support that they need and deserve, and the taxpayer funding an ever-spiralling bill. It's sustainable, it's indefensible, and it's unfair.
Andrew Ranger.
Question 5, please, Mr. Speaker.
Sarah Stay.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 5 and 11 together. In Wales, the partnership between our two Labour governments is delivering on the people's priorities. NHS waiting lists have fallen for 3 consecutive months. We are creating tens of thousands of jobs in every corner of Wales through our free ports, investment zones, support for steel workers, inward investments and thriving green industries.
Andrew Ranger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Supporting people into work is not just the right thing to do economically, but morally as well. I therefore welcome the recently announced UK Trailblazer programme in North Wales that will do away with the one-size-fits-all approach and will instead meet people where they are, giving them a greater chance into stable and good employment. Does the Secretary of State agree that this shows the power of partnership we now have and a commitment that no one will be left behind on both sides of the M4? And will the Secretary of State join me in congratulating Wrexham football team on their historic back-to-back promotion this weekend to the EFL Championship?
Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many congratulations to Wrexham. Really delighted to see them promoted and very sad that Cardiff were relegated. My right honourable friend is right. The government understands that work is crucial both to our health and well-being, but also to improving our living standards. And that's why last week we announced a £10 million pilot in Blaenau Gwent, Neath Port Talbot and Denbighshire to help support people back into work. We will not sit by and let the Tories' broken welfare system continue, one which has condemned people to a life without work. These Trailblazer projects will help more people in Wales back into secure, well-paid jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since this UK Labour government was elected, over 2 million extra GP appointments have been delivered in England, and thanks to a record-breaking £21 billion budget settlement, waiting lists in Wales have gone down 3 months in a row. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that our NHS and our country are safer and stronger when you have two governments working together to make devolution work and not tear our union apart?
I couldn't agree more with my honourable friend. Driving down NHS waiting lists is a shared priority for both the UK and the Welsh Labour governments. As she says, waiting lists have fallen for 3 consecutive months as a result of our governments working together. Meanwhile, the Conservatives and Plaid Cymru voted against an extra £600 million for the Welsh NHS, and reform would sell it off to the highest bidder.
Alistair.
Does the Secretary of State think that the imposition from tomorrow of a parcels border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland will strengthen the Union, given that parcels business to business from Wales or any other part of the UK to Northern Ireland will now be subject to EU customs declarations and checks? How does that strengthen the Union?
Can I thank the honourable member for his question? As I said to an earlier question, we want to make sure that trading is made easier, that we remove the red tapes and barriers, and those are the discussions that we are having at the moment with the EU.
Jim Shannon.
Mr. Speaker, what strengthens this union is the nations of Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland intertwined with England. It's the Gaelic nations of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland and the cultures and the history that they bring together. It's also the benefits of the union in relation to employment, to jobs and the opportunity. It's the constitution, it's our service and uniform. All those things bring us together in a way that nothing else can. So this great United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland can have a better union and can do better together.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the honourable gentleman for his question? I definitely believe that the 4 nations together in the UK are stronger together.
Real Democrat spokesperson. What's going on?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's no greater threat to our union than the feeling that workers in one nation matter less than those in another. And people in and around Port Talbot right now feel like they've had a rotten deal. So can the Minister explain why the deal that her government did with Tata meant that workers who had been at the company for longer than 25 years didn't have that service reflected in their redundancy payments, and why workers wishing to access the retraining element had to forego their right to the enhanced redundancy payment too. And is it true that reportedly, as of February, only 3 people so far have applied for that scheme?
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, Tata made the decision to close the blast furnaces in January 2024, 6 months before the general election. They closed the coke ovens in March 2024. An agreement for the grant for the EAF had already been done, and he might remember that Blast Furnace 5 closed down on polling day, on general election day. The timeline was fixed in order for that electric arc furnace to be delivered. In 10 weeks, we negotiated a better deal, better terms and protections for the whole workforce at Port Talbot. No immediate compulsory redundancies, the best voluntary redundancy package ever offered by Tata to its UK workforce. We saved 5,000 jobs, and 385 acres of land are being released for development and regeneration and future opportunities at the site. All in all, this is a £1.3 billion investment deal, very different from the situation in Scunthorpe.
Perfect. We now come to Prime Minister's questions. Clive Jones.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday evening, Royal Air Force Typhoons successfully conducted strikes against Houthi military targets in Yemen in a joint operation with our US allies. This action was in line with long-standing policy of the UK government to defend freedom of navigation in the Red Sea after Houthi attacks fuel regional instability and risk economic security for families in the UK. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to say that all UK aircraft and personnel returned safely, and I pay tribute to the professionalism and bravery of all our servicemen and servicewomen. The Defence Secretary, Mr. Speaker, is making a statement immediately after PMQs. Mr. Speaker, can I congratulate Prime Minister Mark Carney on his election in Canada? Our 2 countries are the closest of Commonwealth allies, partners and friends, and we will work together to deepen our economic relationship to benefit working people here in the UK. Mr. Speaker, may I also congratulate everyone across the House, including members of this House and the Press Gallery, who ran marathons in London and Manchester. In particular, the Honourable Member for Gordon and Buchan for the fastest run of any female MP. And, of course, the Shadow Justice Secretary, who I'm reliably informed is still running. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Clive Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to associate myself with the remarks of the Prime Minister about the professionalism of our armed forces, and also congratulate Mark Carney on being elected as Prime Minister of Canada. And also everybody who took part in the London Marathon. Both my daughters have done it. It's something I can't do anymore, sadly. Later today, Mr. Speaker, I'm introducing a bill to guarantee Parliament has the final say on any trade deal, including any agreement with President Trump. This isn't new. It's exactly what Labour promised to do in an official policy paper put forward in 2001. I'm asking this government to keep its promise. Currently, members of Parliament have no vote. They have no voice on trade deals. So, will the Prime Minister...
Order. I think the Honourable... What this is good. I think you're on a marathon yourself. I think the Prime Minister may have got a bit. Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can we extend our congratulations to his daughters for running the marathon? In relation to trade deals, the government retains the right, obviously, to strike trade deals, delivering growth, jobs and opportunities for working people. We clearly set that out in our manifesto. That's exactly what we're doing. Parliament, as he knows, does have a well-established role in scrutinising and ratifying these deals. And he knows that was strengthened under the last Labour government, as he references.
Dan Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's going to have to be a coming together of Reform and the Conservative Party in some way. A deal, a pact, or a merger. These aren't my words, Mr. Speaker, but those of the most senior Tory in elected public office in the country, the Mayor of the Tees Valley. So if senior Tories are plotting it, the Leader of the Opposition won't deny it, doesn't that mean that the only way for us to stop this plot is to vote Labour?
Well, it's no need to answer. You've no responsibility for any part. Right, let's move to the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, the Prime Minister's Safeguarding Minister admitted on the floor of the House that there was a cover-up of the child rape gang scandal. Does the Prime Minister think we should expose this cover-up?
Mr. Speaker, this is obviously a serious issue. I oversaw the first grooming gang prosecution, which was in Rochdale more than a decade ago. There is a contrast here because the Leader of the Opposition, when she was Minister for Children, Women and Equalities, never raised this issue in the House in 3 years. Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Home Secretary held 352 external meetings during 20 months. How many were on this issue? Not one. And they failed, of course, to implement a single recommendation for the independent inquiry into child sex abuse. Mr. Speaker, my position is absolutely clear. Where there's evidence, the police should investigate and there should be appropriate prosecutions. That's route number one. Route number two, we should implement existing recommendations, which did expose what went wrong. They weren't, those recommendations were not implemented by the last government. They're being implemented by this government. We are providing for local inquiries. We're investing more on delivering truth and justice for victims than the party opposite did in 14 long years.
Mr. Speaker, in the last year of Conservative government, we had a gangs task force that found 500 perpetrators, protecting thousands of victims. We launched that inquiry that he's talking about, but more still needs to be done. It's now 4 months since I asked him for a full national inquiry. Instead, he promised 5 local inquiries. There will be one in Oldham. Will he now name where the other 4 inquiries will be?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are providing for local inquiries. This is a serious... Well, they've got so much to say now. Why did they not... Mr. Speaker, why did they not implement a single recommendation in the 14 years they had in office? We're taking forward those. There are recommendations already in place about the change that needs to be taken. They sat on a shelf under the last government. We are acting on them. We are providing for local inquiries, and we're investing more in delivering truth than they ever did.
He cannot name a single place because nothing is happening. He stood there at the dispatch box, promised 5 local inquiries. Nothing is happening. On the last day of term, he had his minister come out to water down the promise to say they would provide funding. That is not good enough. At least 50 towns are affected by rape gangs. Places like Peterborough, Derby, Birmingham, Nottingham, Leicester, Rotherham, Rochdale and Preston. Is he dragging his heels on this because he doesn't want Labour cover-ups exposed?
Mr. Speaker, I spent 5 years prosecuting this case. Mr. Speaker, I was the prosecutor that brought the first case. And when that file was brought to my attention, Mr. Speaker, I noticed that one of the defendants had not been prosecuted previously. Far from covering up, I asked for that file so that I could have a look at it. On the back of that, I then changed the entire approach to prosecutions, which was then lauded by the government. We were doing the right thing and brought those prosecutions. So my record was going after where I thought something had gone wrong and putting it right. She stayed silent throughout their years in government, and so did the entire front bench.
Mr. Speaker, he's not the Director of Public Prosecutions anymore. He is the Prime Minister. People want to know what he is going to do now, not talk about what he did years ago. We are asking for a full national inquiry. Andy Burnham wants a national inquiry. He's not Conservative, he's Labour. Harriet Harman wants one. The member for Rotherham wants one. All of the victims I have met want a full national inquiry. He keeps talking about local inquiries, yet they have not got going. And they haven't got going because local authorities don't want to investigate themselves. Local inquiries cannot force witnesses to appear. Local inquiries can't force people to give evidence under oath. So why won't he have a national inquiry?
Mr. Speaker, we've had a national inquiry. We've had recommendations. There are hundreds of recommendations that have been made in relation to this issue. It is a serious issue. I strongly believe that we should implement the recommendations that have already been made. And that is what we are doing. I strongly believe we should listen to victims, and we've been listening to victims on this side for decades and working with victims for decades in relation to what they want, which is local inquiries, and we've set those local inquiries up.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, he says we should listen to victims. The victims want a national inquiry. We haven't had a national inquiry. We had the child sex abuse inquiry, which Conservatives launched. There is still more to be done. It didn't cover this scandal in detail. In Manchester, just last year, authorities were still covering up abuse. The local inquiry chair there has quit. Bradford Council, an area of some of the worst abuses, refuses any inquiry, local or national. Whether it's the streets of Birmingham or the Town Hall of Bradford, it is chaos and cover-ups with Labour councils. When will he show leadership and do the right thing?
The right thing is to implement the recommendations that we've got, which is what they palpably failed to do in government. The right thing to do is to have the national inquiries that we need, which is what the victims want. The right thing to do is to invest in our criminal justice system so we can bring people to justice. They've absolutely collapsed the criminal justice system. Prosecutions for rape under their watch, they go up or down. They went down to record lows. Investment in prosecuting these cases went down. Their record was abysmal. They should hang their heads in shame.
Mr. Speaker, this is just distraction tactics. He hasn't read the recommendations, because if he had read the recommendations, he would know none of them would tackle this issue. The fact is, if I were standing where he is, we would have had a national inquiry months ago. This issue is personal for me. I have met many of the victims. This is about the protection of children. Nothing else is more important. In the last few days, Mr. Speaker, I've been to Wiltshire, Lincolnshire, Northumberland, Kent. All of them have outstanding children's social care. Do you know why, Mr. Speaker? Because they're all run by Conservatives. That's the difference that Conservative councillors make. Isn't the choice tomorrow between chaos and cover-ups under Labour councils or better services under the Conservatives?
She says they'd have a national inquiry. 14 years. 14 years, and they didn't do it. It's so hollow. And yes, tomorrow is the first opportunity the country has to pass their verdict on the leader of the opposition and the party opposite after the general. Have they changed? Have they learned? It's passing verdict on the leader of the opposition. We'll see her next week.
Right. Nadia Winter.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish that the Leader of the Opposition would stop weaponising victims of child sexual political points. It's damaging victims, and if she cared about child protection, she wouldn't be doing that. It's a disgrace. You're a disgrace. Mr. Speaker, new data shows that in March last year, in Hyson Green and Arboretum wards in my constituency, 64% of children were in poverty, the highest proportion in the whole of the East Midlands, and a damning indictment of the previous Conservative government. One of the proudest achievements of the last Labour government was the action it took on child poverty. Can the Prime Minister confirm that this Labour government will do everything in its power to eliminate child poverty, and that its task force has not ruled out abolishing the two-child benefit limit, the single most cost-effective way to pull children out of poverty?
Minister.
Well, she's absolutely right to raise the disgraceful record of the previous government, which saw an extra 900,000 children in poverty. I'm proud of Labour's record in reducing child poverty, which is what we do in government, and the task force is exploring every lever to reduce child poverty.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Edward Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And on behalf of my party, can I send our congratulations to Mark Carney and the Liberal Party of Canada on their historic victory. We wish them well as Canada continues to stand up strongly to President Trump's tariffs and threats. Mr. Speaker, Canada has learnt what happens when you do a trade deal with President Trump. He can't be trusted to stick with it. The Prime Minister didn't answer my question last week, and he didn't answer my honourable friend, the member for Wokingham, just now. So let me ask again. Will the government give members of this House a vote on the floor of this House on any deal he agrees with President Trump? Yes or no?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are in negotiations with the US in relation to a deal. We will act, obviously, in the national interest to make sure that if there is a deal, it's the right deal for our country. If it is secured, it'll go through the known procedures for this House.
Fred David.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm very disappointed in that reply. There was no yes or no response. We do want a vote, and we will keep pressing him and his government on that. But turning to a domestic issue now, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend, the member for Dorking and Hawley, has taken up the cause of Fiona Lascaris, whose autistic adult son, Christopher, was horrifically exploited and then murdered by a convicted criminal. As ITV News has reported, when Fiona tried to get a mental capacity assessment for her son, she was dismissed. So Christopher never got the support that might have saved his life. We're going to try to change the law so families' concerns over a loved one's mental capacity have to be considered. Will the Prime Minister give his personal backing to that change to stop another tragedy like Christopher's?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for raising that terrible case, and I think the thoughts of the whole House will be with Christopher's family and friends affected by this, and we'll certainly look into what else we can do, and if there's further details that have been given to me of the particular case, I'll make sure that we follow it up.
Jenko.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to start by congratulating Truro City Football Club, who've gone from homelessness to league champions in one season. Yeah. In Cornwall, clean energy is a huge opportunity. We're fortunate to have vast natural resources, onshore, offshore winds, geothermal and tidal. We have a strategically vital port and a workforce ready to step up. I welcome that Falmouth Community Hospital will be getting new solar panels and benefiting from those first investments made by GB Energy. As we pursue our Clean Power Plan, will the Prime Minister confirm this is just the beginning of that investment in renewables in Cornwall?
Can I add my congratulations to Truro? Clean energy investments are powering our plan for change, Mr. Speaker, and that's just the beginning. We'll go further. 200 schools and hundreds of NHS sites across the country will benefit from GB Energy's first solar projects, including Falmouth Community Hospital in my honourable friend's constituency. Hospitals will save, Mr. Speaker, £45,000 a year off their energy bills, with that money going back to the frontline services. That's the better future we're building, good for patients, good for jobs growth and our energy security.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To date, so far this year, 10,000 young, undocumented males have illegally crossed the English Channel into our country, a 40% increase on this time last year, many coming from cultures that are somewhat alien to ours. They are being housed at a cost of many billions of pounds a year in hotels and increasingly in private rented homes. The effect on communities is one of a sense of deep unfairness, actually bordering on resentment. In Runcorn alone, there are 750 of these young men. Just in Runcorn. Is it not time to admit that Smash the Gangs was nothing more than an election slogan and not a policy? And isn't it time to declare a national emergency and to act accordingly?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are passing a borders bill with extensive powers to smash the gangs. These are terrorist-like powers that give powers to the police to intercept where they think the suspects are committing people smuggling, which is a vile trade. We must take back control of our borders after the last government lost control. But what did he and his party do? Did they support those extra measures to actually smash the gang? No, they went in the lobby with this lot in their new coalition to vote against them. And let's be clear what a vote for his party means. It means a vote to charge for the NHS. It means a pro-Putin foreign policy and a vote against workers' rights. And now we hear, Mr. Speaker, he's recruited Liz Truss as his new top advisor, as he was cheering on the mini-budget.
Just silence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For years, my constituents in Orrell have suffered from a lack of local health provision. But next month, that will begin to change, thanks to a new partnership that I built with our local NHS, Wigan Athletic and Wigan Warriors at a Centre for Excellence in Women's Sport. This will be a shining example of shifting healthcare from hospitals into communities. So can I urge the Prime Minister to continue with our plan for change and ignore the member for Clacton who, for decades, has pushed to dismantle our NHS so that my constituents must pay to see their doctor.
Well, I see the member for Clacton complaining, but what did he say? He said we're going to have to move to an insurance-based system of healthcare. His words. If you can afford it, you pay. Not under our watch, Mr. Speaker. While he's busy taking Liz Truss's advice and fawning over Putin, we're driving down waiting lists, 3 million extra appointments delivered, and waiting lists slashed in the most deprived areas. That's 6 times the waiting list have come down, including during the winter periods. We're rebuilding our NHS, rebuilding our country of future, and delivering for working people.
Liz Jarvis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just before Christmas, thousands of my constituents in Eastleigh were left without water after yet another incident involving Southern Water, the latest in a long series of issues, including outages and sewage dumping in our precious chalk stream, the River Itchen. Yet this month, my constituents face water bill hikes of 47%. Does the Prime Minister understand why my constituents are so angry about this? And what reassurances can he give my constituents that Southern Water and Ofwat will be held to account?
Prime Minister.
I thank her for raising this, and the party opposite should apologise to her constituents for allowing record sewage into our waterways. Our Water Act will clean up our rivers, lakes and seas. Under new powers, which came into effect last week, in fact, water bosses can now face years in jail for concealing sewage spills. We've banned the payment of bonuses and introduced new powers. And of course, we're delivering a major review through our Water Commission. And I'll reassure the member we won't hesitate to take further steps.
Sam Colley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Listening to residents in North West Cambridgeshire on the doorstep and in local coffee mornings, there's a clear message. People want local police that have the time and resources to get to know crime in their areas and tackle it at the root. And I know our Labour mayoral candidate's committed to that as she's elected tomorrow. So could the Prime Minister update residents across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough on how our plan for change is tackling crime and antisocial behaviour and boosting police ranks by 13,000 officers that will be visible in all local communities?
The party opposite decimated neighbourhood police, and crimes like shoplifting and antisocial behaviour ran rife. I can tell him what we're doing through the plan for change: extra police officers, extra PCSOs and more special constables. On top of that, Mr. Speaker, a named officer for every community and more teams out in our town centres on Friday and Saturday nights. That's what you get with a Labour mayor working with a Labour government to deliver change for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough.
Josh Babrin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Eastbourne War veteran Staff Sergeant Pauline Cole is a veteran who sustained injuries while serving our country. She was awarded military compensation. But because military compensation is currently considered income by this government, her pension credit has been cut from £77 a week to just £11 a week. We've met with the relevant minister to try to address this to no avail. So I want to ask the Prime Minister, with the 80th anniversary of VE Day just next week, will he meet with Pauline, who's in the gallery, and I, to address this injustice and to ensure that no veteran is penalised for serving our country?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising this important issue with us? We will always stand up for those who serve our country. I paid tribute to Pauline for her service, and I will make sure that she gets the appropriate meeting that she wants and needs to discuss her specific case.
Julie Mims.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, thanks to this Labour government, hundreds of free breakfast clubs have opened across our country. Will the Prime Minister join me in sending good wishes to the staff and pupils at Castle Carrick, Udale, Longtown, Inglewood, Brook Street, Blackford, Hallbank Gate and Bishop Harvey Goodwin schools in my constituency, which are among the first to benefit from this important scheme? And can he confirm that this is just the start of Labour's plan for change to deliver for working parents?
Prime Minister.
Well, look, let me pay tribute to all the staff in her constituency who are working in the breakfast clubs, which, of course, Mr. Speaker, deliver free breakfast clubs, 30 minutes of free childcare, saving working parents £450 a year, and we've opened the first 750 across the country. There'll be many more to come, Mr. Speaker. We are, of course, also saving parents £50 a year by making school uniforms cheaper, something the Leader of the Opposition ordered all her troops to vote against.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The playing of music and loud videos on public transport without headphones is becoming increasingly common. The various bylaws outlawing such antisocial behaviour are clearly not working, whilst planned cuts to the British Transport Police are bound to make matters worse. Will the Prime Minister back the Lib Dem plan to introduce effective enforcement and a publicity campaign to persuade people to plug in their headphones? After which, you never know, perhaps we can encourage the uncivil minority to take their feet off the seats.
Prime Minister.
Well, he raises a really important question of antisocial behaviour. They're laughing about it. That really sums up what they did in the last 14 years. He knows there are already strict rules in place to prevent antisocial behaviour, including fines of up to £1,000. But we are focused on tackling antisocial behaviour. It's not low level. It does affect people and their communities and their sense of safety and what they can do with their own lives. And that's why an additional £1.2 billion has been set aside for policing, 13,000 new neighbourhood police officers, new respect orders, and a named officer in every community. We take this seriously. They laugh about it.
Bel Ribeiro Adé.
Mr. Speaker, rent in my constituency is becoming exceedingly unaffordable, with the ONS's most recent data estimating that the average price of rents have risen by over 10% in the last year, whilst average wages haven't risen at the same level. And I know several metro mayors are calling for the power to control rents in their region to help tackle the issue, and the steps in the Renters' Rights Bill to cap market rents at the market rate are positive. But as landlords are the ones setting the market rates, renters in my constituency are fearful that this won't be enough to protect them from rising rents. So can the Prime Minister tell me what steps this government is taking to bring down rental prices?
Prime Minister.
She's absolutely right to raise this important issue. Communities across the country are facing the consequences of the utter failure of the party opposite to build enough homes. Our Renters' Right Bill improves the system for 11 million private renters, blocking demands for multiple months of rent in advance, and finally abolishing no-fault evictions, something they said they'd do over and over again, and as usual, never got round to doing. Mr. Speaker, that's backed up by major planning reforms, our New Homes Accelerator, and £600 million to deliver 300,000 homes in London, part of our 1.5 million homes we'll build across the country that are desperately needed.
Sir Bernard.
Does the Prime Minister recall from our history that even during the Blitz, the concert pianist Dame Maura Hess continued performing her piano recitals at the National Gallery, including the performance of German music like J.S. Bach's Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring. As a trustee of the Parliament Choir and as a singer, can I ask him to lend his support to Parliament's own VE Day celebration, which will be next Wednesday evening in Westminster Hall, when we will perform in the presence of His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent and both speakers of both houses, not only that Bach chorale, but the music of our other allies and, of course, some British music too. Tickets are still available.
Prime Minister.
Can I wish him the very best of luck? It will be a fantastic event, and it's just one of the many important celebrations that that are taking place to commemorate VE Day. I would encourage the whole House to buy those remaining tickets to go along and attend the concert, which I think is in Westminster Hall, as well as the many street parties and other events that will be across the country. And I look forward to paying my own tributes on VE Day, but I wish him luck.
Sarah Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the action taken by the government to fix our NHS and deliver 2 million more appointments, something my constituents are already benefiting from. Together with Warrington and Halton NHS Trust, I recently submitted a ready-to-go proposal for a new urgent treatment centre and outpatients facility in Warrington. Warrington has over 200,000 residents and no urgent treatment centre. The proposal would reduce A&E waiting times and deliver 100,000 appointments every year. Will the Prime Minister or Health Secretary agree to meet with me and local health partners to discuss this transformational project?
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm happy to make sure that my honourable friend meets the Health Secretary. Mr. Speaker, we have got waiting lists down for 6 months now in a row, delivering 3 million extra appointments. The Further Faster 20 programme is doubling the rate at which waiting lists are falling, including in her trust. And of course, earlier this week, we froze prescription charges at under £10. There's a lot that's been done, a lot more to do, but our plan for change is working, getting the NHS back on its feet.
Leila Moran.
Mr. Speaker. The non-disclosure agreement was entirely one-sided, gagging me, but not the men or the execs involved. It covered not just business matters, but everything painful I'd endured. I ended up in hospital. These are the words of a victim who suffered intolerable sexual misconduct in her workplace. Does the Prime Minister agree with me and members across this House that the misuse of NDAs in cases like this are totally unacceptable? And if so, will he help us in amending the Employment Rights Bill going through the Lords now to stop this pervasive practice once and for all?
Prime Minister.
She's right to highlight the misuse of NDAs, and I don't think anybody would countenance the misuse of NDAs, particularly in a case as serious as the one that she cited, which is why we're looking whatever we can do to make sure they're not misused.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 14 years of a Conservative government who let fly tipping increase to record levels across the country, my constituents in Ealing Southall will welcome the Prime Minister's announcement today that fly tippers will now face tough action, new technology for enforcement and up to 5 years in prison. Could the Prime Minister set out what other steps he is taking to help councils tackle fly tipping and the difference this will make to communities like Ealing Southall?
Thank you for raising this issue. Under the last government, we saw 1 million incidents of fly tipping. Under Conservative councils, we see enforcement down and fly tipping up. Look at Tory-led Northumberland, where incidents of fly tipping are up 76%. We're introducing, Mr. Speaker, tough powers to seize and crush the vehicles of commercial fly tippers who now face up to 5 years in prison for operating illegally. That's a Labour government clearing up the mess left by the party opposite.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister, a week tomorrow, the whole nation will come together to commemorate VE Day. Those who fought in World War II, including my own father, would often attest that no one did more to maintain their morale in adversity than Dame Vera Lynn, the force's sweetheart. A doughty band of campaigners for several years have been trying to create a national memorial in her honour. I'm pleased to tell the House they now have a stunning design. They have a site, appropriately at Dover, and they've already raised over 3/4 of the funding that they would need. So at this very special time, would the Prime Minister lend his support in principle to this noble endeavour? Would he be prepared to accept a personal briefing on the campaign, in which case I suspect that he and I will meet again?
Always a pleasure. But look, I'm going to congratulate him on his campaign. It is really important, and many people were delighted, I think, to join that campaign. Dame Vera is sewn into our nation's soul, providing the soundtrack for our greatest generation, and so it's particularly timely. So I'll support the campaign that he has done so much to promote.
Adam Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whether it is the crevasse on the island outside of Asda in Long Eaton or the array of tyre poppers on Quarry Hill Road in Ilkeston, every day my inbox is filled with complaints about potholes that Conservative Derbyshire County Council has failed to fix. Given that the government has poured £1.6 billion of extra funding into road repairs and that tomorrow is the Derbyshire County Council elections, does the Prime Minister agree with me that it is high time that Erewash and the wider Derbyshire got itself a Labour council that will actually repair the roads?
Well, he's absolutely right. Conservative Derbyshire County Council is home to more potholes than anywhere else in the country, and drivers are paying the price. Mr. Speaker, our plan for change has committed enough funding to fix 7 million extra potholes this year, and for the first time, councils like Derbyshire must publish how many potholes they've actually repaired in order to get the cash. The party opposite left Britain's roads crumbling. We are fixing them.
Sammy Wilson.
Mr. Speaker, the blackouts in Spain, which have caused chaos, the realisation amongst many backbenchers in his own party that thousands of jobs are being lost in Scotland in the oil industry, and the fact that businesses are facing energy costs which are making them uncompetitive and consumers being plunged into poverty, fuel poverty. Does he not recognise that his net zero policy is not only bad, but it's mad? And indeed, his own former leader is now accepting this. Will he not accept the advice from someone within his own party if he won't accept advice from this side of the House?
Prime Minister.
Well, many years on the opposite benches, I learned when asking questions at PMQs not just to read the headline on a Wednesday morning, but to look at some of the detail. What Tony Blair said is we should have more carbon capture. We've invested in carbon capture. That's many jobs across different parts of the country. He said that AI should be used. We agree with that. We've invested huge amounts in AI on the jobs of the future. He also said we need domestic targets so that businesses have their certainty. If you look at the detail of what Tony Blair said, he's absolutely aligned with what we're doing here. These are the jobs and the security of the future. I would also say that we shouldn't weaponise the difficult position that people in Spain and other countries find themselves in at a very difficult time.
Final question, Alex Bellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the government's decision this month to secure British steel, and at a time when European security is critical, it is defence manufacturers in the Black Country, like Summers Forge in Hellsarrin and BB Price in Cradley Heath, that will be using that steel to make the military equipment that our defence needs. Will the Prime Minister commit to make manufacturing investment in the Black Country a national priority so that we can live up to our industrial heritage and create the high-quality defence jobs that our region so desperately needs?
Prime Minister. Well, I pay tribute to my honourable and gallant friend for his service to his country. He understands our national security and economic security go hand in hand. Mr. Speaker, it's vital that defence investment creates more jobs, apprenticeships and opportunities in the Black Country and across the United Kingdom. That's why we've launched a new hub to give up to 12,000 small firms better access to defence contracts. And of course, we're raising defence spending, the highest sustained increase since the Cold War, something the party opposite failed to do in 14 years in office.
Right, we'll let the front bench change over. We now come to the first statement. Secretary of State for Defence, John Healey.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I wish to make a statement to update the House on the action that we took last night against a Houthi military target. We did so in collective self-defence and to uphold the freedom of navigation as Britain has always done. Mr. Speaker, yesterday UK forces conducted a joint operation with US allies against a Houthi military facility in Yemen. Our intelligence analysis identified a cluster of buildings 15 miles south of Sana'a, used by the Houthis to manufacture drones of the type used to attack ships in the Red Sea and in the Gulf of Aden. Royal Air Force Typhoons, FGR-4s, with air refuelling support from RAF Voyager tankers, struck a number of these buildings with paved way for precision bombs last night. This action was limited, it was targeted, it was devised to minimise the risk of civilian life. Everyone involved in the UK operation has returned to base safely. And I want to thank, on behalf of the House, all members of our armed forces involved in this operation and to pay tribute to them for their total professionalism and their courage. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, yesterday's operation was carried out alongside the US, our closest security ally. It was conducted in line with both the UN Charter and the established UK policy of this government and the last. And in opposition, Mr. Speaker, you'll remember Labour backed the government when it conducted 5 separate strikes with the US against Houthi targets. Mr. Speaker, yesterday's attack aligns with 4 broad objectives. 1, to restore freedom of navigation in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. 2, to degrade Houthi capability and prevent future attacks. 3, to reinforce regional security alongside allies and partners. And 4, to protect our economic security at home. First thing this morning, Mr. Speaker, the government briefed the Shadow Defence Secretary, the Speakers of both Houses, the Liberal Democrats Defence spokesperson and the Chair of the House of Commons Defence Committee. I can tell the House now this afternoon that our initial assessment is that the planned targets were all successfully hit and we've seen no evidence of civilian casualties. Mr. Speaker, since November 2023, the Houthis have waged a campaign of aggression against international shipping in the Red Sea. To date, there have been over 320 attacks. These attacks are illegal, they're deadly, and we totally condemn them. Maritime routes have been disrupted, sailors have been killed, commercial ships have been hit and sunk. The Houthis have even targeted aid vessels destined for Yemen itself, as well as military vessels of our allies and partners. Both the Royal and the US Navies have been forced into action in the Red Sea, and last September I met the crew of HMS Diamond, who shot down a ballistic missile and multiple drones in self-defence during their deployment in the Red Sea. Make no mistake, the Houthis act as an agent of instability across the region. They continue to receive backing from Iran, both military and financial, and even Russia has attempted to support the Houthi operations. The aggression in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden is yet another example of how our adversaries are increasingly working together against our interests. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to be clear. This government rejects any Houthi claims that attacking ships in the Red Sea is somehow supporting Gaza. The Houthis were targeting tankers and seizing ships well before the war in Gaza began. Their attacks since have targeted vessels of all nations. So hear me when I say these attacks do absolutely nothing for the Palestinian people or the push for a lasting peace. Mr. Speaker, an estimated 12% of global trade, 30% of container traffic passes through the Red Sea every year. But the Houthi threat has led to a drastic fall. Levels are 55% down on what they were in November 2023. The majority of ships now take a 5,000-mile diversion around the Cape of Good Hope, adding a full fortnight to a journey between Asia and Europe, and pushing up prices of the goods that British people and others rely on. This cannot continue. And Mr. Speaker, in opposition I argued, and I quote, "The lion's share of the responsibility for protecting international freedom of navigation in the Red Sea is being shouldered by the Americans, just as the US has been doing across the world now for 80 years. And since last month, the US has been conducting a sustained campaign targeting the Houthis in Yemen to restore freedom of navigation. They moved 2 carriers into the region. Their recent strikes have destroyed multiple command and control centres, air defence systems, advanced weapons manufacturing sites and advanced weapons storage sites. The US military say their operations have now degraded the effectiveness of the Houthi attack, reporting that ballistic missile launches have dropped by 69%, one-way drone attacks are down by 55%. Mr. Speaker, the US continues to be the UK's closest security ally. They're stepping up in the Red Sea. We are alongside them. Yesterday's joint operation builds on the broader support that we've provided to the US in the region in recent months. That includes air-to-air refuelling, the use of our important military base, Diego Garcia, for regional security operations, and our AF Typhoons to support the defence of the US carrier strike group, which has been coming under near daily attack now from Houthi missiles and drones. Mr. Speaker, this government will always act in the interest of our national and economic security. The UK is now stepping up and encouraging allies to do more to protect our common security, just as we are with last week's deployment of our own carrier strike group, starting an 8-month deployment into the Mediterranean and Indo-Pacific. The UK has a long, proud history of taking action to protect freedom of navigation. This illegal Houthi aggression doesn't just disrupt shipping. It doesn't just destabilise the region. It hits our economy here at home. And that's why the government took this decision. That's why the UK has taken this action, to help protect freedom of navigation, reinforce regional stability, strengthen economic security for families across the country. Mr. Speaker, we are determined that we will keep Britain secure at home and strong abroad.
Shadow Secretary of State James Cottridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm grateful to the Secretary of State for early sight of his statement and to the Minister of State for the Armed Forces for the briefing he extended to myself and other parliamentarians earlier today. As far as His Majesty's opposition are concerned, the rationale for these actions has not changed since we undertook similar operations in government in the months leading up to the general election with the support of the then opposition, and we agree that this action is effectively an act of self-defence on behalf of ourselves and our closest allies. After all, with the main target for RAF Typhoons being a Houthi drone factory, we should remember that drones were used by the Houthis to target our own naval ships, such as the attempted drone attack on HMS Diamond in January last year. But whilst HMS Diamond was able to take effective action in response on that occasion, we know that this is a capability that can be produced in very large numbers and that the threat remains a clear and present danger. Indeed, we understand that the US Navy continues to be subject to Houthi aggression, including from drones. Thus, in our view, it is entirely legitimate to support the defence of our close ally, the US, and to prevent future potential attacks on our own fleet and international shipping by attacking the Houthi drone threat at source. But the Houthis' actions are not just a threat to ourselves and our allies. As the Secretary of State said, they are illegal and completely counter to international humanitarian priorities, given that their attacks have imperilled aid deliveries to the Yemeni people, whilst undermining a crucial shipping route for grain en route to some of the poorest people in the world. The government therefore has our full support for this latest operation, and we are grateful on this side to the brave and highly skilled personnel of the Royal Air Force who conducted the mission, including both the Typhoon crews and those supporting the air-to-air refuelling mission. In particular, we welcome their safe return and completion of what appears to be a successful operation in terms of degrading Houthi drone capability. Of course, the US have been undertaking their own self-defence against Houthi attacks, and we very much welcome the close working with US allies, as was the case when we were in government and under the previous administration in the US. This underlines the continuity of our most important strategic military partnership, and it is right that we work as closely as possible with the US to address threats to freedom of navigation. That said, Mr. Speaker, that freedom of navigation is vital to the ships of many nations, not just the UK and the US. The whole world benefits from action taken to keep international shipping flowing, supporting the wider economy. So can the Secretary of State update us on what talks he has had with other allies, including NATO members, on providing direct military support against the Houthi threat in future? After all, this is not only a threat to many other nations, it involves other hostile states, notably Iran, with their long-running support not just for the Houthis, but also Hezbollah, Hamas and other armed groups in Iraq and elsewhere. So how will the UK dock into the approach being taken by the new US administration towards Iran? The Secretary of State also referred to Russian involvement. Can he confirm reports that the Houthis have received targeting assistance with potential ballistic missile attacks from Russia? And does this not show why supporting Ukraine against Russia is about a much wider strategic picture that directly threatens the United Kingdom? He also referred to the use of our military base, Diego Garcia, for regional security operations. Well, soon it will not be ours, Mr. Speaker. And doesn't this kind of action show why surrendering its sovereignty is so reckless? Finally, turning to the SDR. It was very concerning that the Permanent Secretary to the Ministry of Defence said to the PAC yesterday, and I quote, "It is a strategic defence review that will need to be translated into a set of specific investment decisions in individual capabilities and projects. That will be work for later in the summer and into the autumn." He knows that there are urgent procurement decisions needed that relate directly to the Houthi threat in the Red Sea, not least upgrades to the Sea Viper system, which we believe must be accelerated. He also knows that procurement is largely on hold, awaiting the publication of the SDR. So he promised to publish the SDR in the spring. Can he confirm it will definitely be published in May, which is the last month of spring, and most importantly, that in May we will see the full detail on all major individual procurement choices so that the MOD can get on with them as a matter of the utmost urgency?
Mr. Speaker, can I welcome the honourable gentleman's tone and the content of his response to the statement. Labour backed the previous government's strikes against the Houthis. He points out for the House that the rationale then is the same as the rationale now, and that was a useful contribution to this discussion. He's right to say that the clear and present threat that the Houthis pose to all nations, including to ours and to our closest allies, is also the same. And, Mr. Speaker, when I was Shadow Defence Secretary and responded to the previous government, I did so as he does to me today, because this is bigger than politics. This is about freedom of navigation, it's about regional stability, and it is also about that most important security relationship that the UK has with the US. He asks me about some specific capabilities. I have to say to him, look, we are now able to plan to provide the best possible kit for our armed forces because of the historic commitment to raising the level of defence spending to 2.5% that the Prime Minister made to this House in February, 3 years earlier than his own unfunded plans, and then, of course, moving it to 3% in the next Parliament. He asks about the capabilities on some of our naval ships. And when I met the crew of the HMS Diamond in the autumn, they demonstrated to me and talked to me in detail about just how exceptional their response to that multiple attack was, and just how effective the weaponry on HMS Diamond was at that time. And therefore, we are upgrading the ships with a number of capabilities, including Dragonfire, something that he first talked about. But I say to him, we are now doing not just one ship, as he talked about, but 4. We're doing it sooner than he planned, and we're fully funding it, which he hadn't done. And Mr. Speaker, he asks about the discussions with other nations. Those discussions about the importance of regional stability, about the Houthi threats and the freedom of navigation in the Red Sea, were discussed by foreign ministers at the G7 and at NATO, NATO foreign ministers within the last month. And the very carrier strike group that he welcomed the deployment of last week is multinational by design, is designed to exercise together, but together to reassert some of those basic principles that the attacks last night were designed to support, which is the freedom of navigation of our seas.
The Select Committee, Tabanji Singh Desi.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. I am grateful to the Secretary of State for his statement, and indeed the Minister for the Armed Forces for his in-person briefing beforehand. I am also glad that our brave service personnel involved in yesterday's strike have returned home safely, and that the Precision Sovereign strike has destroyed the drone factory with no civilian casualties. I agree with the Secretary of State that Houthi attacks since 2023 have tragically killed innocent merchant mariners, led to a shocking 55% drop in shipping through the Red Sea, costing billions, fueled regional instability, and has exacerbated the cost of living crisis here in the UK and across the globe. But how confident is my right honourable friend, based on current intelligence, that after yesterday's strike, that there will be freedom of navigation and that there will be no further loss of life because of the Houthis?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to my honourable friend's support for the action that we took overnight. It is part of a sustained campaign, which is a US campaign that we are working alongside. There is no overnight solution to this, but the evidence that is reported from the US military of this new sustained intensive campaign seems to be having an effect on the pace and the rate and the threat that the Houthis pose. And our action last night was designed to reinforce that campaign, to support the push for regional stability, and also to protect the domestic economy and the impact of the disruption in international shipping and the effect that that has on prices for ordinary people.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Helen Maguire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Secretary of State for advance sight of his statement and for the briefing from the Minister for the Armed Forces earlier today. The Houthis' destabilising military campaign in the Red Sea has had a chilling effect on trade through that vital waterway, threatening lives while also imposing costs on British businesses and consumers. The Houthis cannot be allowed to act with impunity and hold the global economy to ransom by restricting freedom of navigation. It's important that their military capabilities are degraded to ensure that trade can flow freely, and that's why we on these benches support the case for limited strikes. And we thank the service personnel involved for their bravery and are pleased that they have returned home safely. It's vital, though, that we fully understand the operational goals behind the mission, as well as the intelligence planning and coordination of the strikes. So can the Minister outline to the House why the government has chosen on this occasion to join the US forces in a joint strike rather than on previous similar missions? The recent leaks from President Trump's cabinet, also pertaining to military action in Yemen against the Houthis, raises concerning questions about how secure US intelligence is and the possible impact on British service personnel. In light of those leaks, can the Minister reassure us that intelligence sharing with the US is completely secure, and whether the government has undertaken an assessment of the security of our intelligence sharing networks with the US? I was reassured to hear from the Minister that the government does not have evidence of any loss of civilian life. So can the Minister update the House on what steps were taken ahead of the mission in an effort to minimise civilian casualties?
Mr. Speaker, I neglected to respond to the honourable gentleman on the SDR, and just would say to him, when the SDR is published in the spring, then he will have all his questions answered. And to the honourable lady, I welcome her recognition of the importance of degrading military capabilities of the Houthis. I welcome her support for the action that we took last night. I say to her with confidence and reassurance that our own UK intelligence, our own UK communication systems remain secure. And in response to her question about why now, first of all, it is action and a decision that we took that is in line with long-established policy, UK policy and the UN Charter, Secondly, it is a reflection of the fact that the US, as I've reported to the House, is stepping up, and we as a close ally are alongside them in this action. And third, it is to protect our economy at home, because the majority of the shipping in this busiest of international sea routes has this big detour that pushes up prices, so that it has a direct impact, not just on our security interests, but on our economic interests in Britain. And that's why we're acting.
Emily Thorne.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I refer the House to my register of interest? The Houthis say that they're shelling international shipping in order to help the Palestinians. However, does my right honourable friend agree that not just by undermining international trade, but by causing a devastating decline in the use of the Suez Canal and crashing the numbers of cruise ships visiting Aqaba, they are actually attacking Egypt and Jordan, two countries who could not be working harder for a future for the Palestinians, who could not be giving more support, whether it is financial, whether it's political or diplomatic, and a refugee for so many. If they really care about the Palestinians, does my right honourable friend agree? They simply should stop this.
Mr. Speaker, I totally agree with my honourable friend. Jordan and Egypt are doing a lot of the heavy lifting in trying to support the Palestinians. It's notable that there is no evidence that the Houthis themselves have provided any aid to the Palestinians in Gaza. And the action that they're taking, the disruption and the intensification of the insecurity in the region is doing absolutely nothing to help the Palestinians' cause.
Sir Oliver Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome this action and join the Defence Secretary in paying tribute to our exemplary armed forces. And it is essential that we tackle the tentacles of Iran through all its proxies, whether it's the Houthis, whether it's Hamas or Hezbollah, that do so much damage to Israel, to the wider Middle East, and not least to the people of Palestine. But I think one of the fundamental questions here, as he will know from the discussions we had when I was Deputy Prime Minister, is what is the long-term strategy to eliminate this threat of the Houthis to Red Sea shipping? And I wonder whether, for the benefit of the House, the Defence Secretary could give some further indication of the new government's thinking on that long-term strategy to address this threat.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I pay tribute to the way that he, when he was Deputy Prime Minister, went out of his way, as we are doing now as a government, to make sure that we were well briefed on such strikes, and I appreciate that. He's absolutely right that military action against the Houthis can only take so far. Therefore, the wider strategy must be the UK doing what we can to work with allies, especially in the region. First of all, to constrain the Houthis, as our action overnight was designed to help do. Second, to bolster the strength and authority and capability of the Yemeni government, which is what my honourable friend, the Foreign Office Minister, announced some of the governance support earlier this year. And the third then is to pursue with allies the importance of a negotiated settlement that gives Yemen a peaceful way forward. And in the meantime, not to lose sight of the responsibility that we have as a nation to support the Yemeni people that are suffering so greatly. And I know that he will welcome the fact that my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, announced in January an extra 5 million of UK aid to Yemen. It brought the total over the previous 12 months to 144 million, and the UK remains the third largest donor to the Yemeni humanitarian programme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State for his statements and echo his words about the courage and professionalism of our service personnel. It's good that everyone's returned safely. But isn't it a case that having a strong and capable military is essential to ensuring our economic security and freedom of trade? And isn't that why the financial institutions and pension funds should be increasing their investment in defence industries and not listen to those voices who are opposed to that?
Quite right, Mr. Speaker, and my honourable friend will be interested to know the work that I and the Chancellor together have commissioned on the barriers in the UK that at the moment are holding back private sources of investment in our defence and our technology industry. And an important part of the defence industrial strategy, when we're able to publish this before too long, will be about how we use the big commitment that this government and this country is now making to invest in defence and our own armed forces fit for the future, how we can use that to leverage much more of private sector sources alongside it so that we can do more quickly.
Sir Julian.
It's clearly unusual for a terrorist group engaged in a civil war to invite retaliation of this sort by attacking international shipping so comprehensively. So clearly they are acting as an agent in Iran's strategy. Therefore, can he advise us, what do the government know about the ability of Iran to keep fueling these attacks in the Red Sea, now that the domestic ability to manufacture drones in Yemen has been degraded? How easy will it be for Iran to supply them directly to the Houthis?
The short answer, Mr. Speaker, is that we must do what we can with allies to make it as hard as possible for Iran to maintain both its financial support to the Houthis and its logistical and munitions and military support and supplies to them. We are working on that with allies. And as I've said to the House earlier on, straight military action that we were conducting last night is a part of the solution for the long term. It is not the whole solution.
Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my right honourable friend for his statement today. And obviously we've had a long-standing relationship with the US. They're our closest security ally. Would he agree with me that our continued work on AUKUS will help to deepen and strengthen that for all of the nations involved?
It will indeed, Mr. Speaker, and the AUKUS programme is a good example of how big defence commitments aren't just a long-term deterrent commitment to our own security and that of our allies, but they have an important economic boost, and how defence can be a driver of economic growth. And my honourable friend has the privilege of representing the town of Barrow, and the Royal Shipyard there will know better than ever and better than anyone just how important that combination is, and that is hardwired into the approach that this government takes.
Dave Dugan.
Mr. Speaker, the brutal oppression of the Palestinians in Gaza will not be helped one iota by the bombing of merchant shipping and the drone strikes against the merchant marine. So we're supportive of the action that's been taken. Seems to be an operation which has the appearance of something which may endure into a more strategic affair. And I wonder if the Secretary of State agrees that, notwithstanding the general consensus in the Chamber today for the action that was taken, whether or not a broader debate in Parliament would be desirable, not to discuss operational imperatives or plans or anything of that nature, but to further reinforce the will of the House. And whilst he celebrates the actions of aircrew, will he further acknowledge that the aircrew wouldn't be able to do the tremendous work they do if it wasn't for all the other trades that keep them mobilised?
Well said, Mr. Speaker. He's absolutely right that standing behind our armed forces and the ultimate professionalism they display is a large cadre of civilian and military personnel that make those operations successful and possible. Mr. Speaker, you'd be wrong to say that this is a sustained campaign. This is the first UK strike on Houthi positions since May last year, and Parliament will be kept informed in the event of any future military interventions such as this.
Kelvin Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Freedom of navigation in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden is essential to the global economic system, and anything that impinges on this impacts the global economy, increases costs to the environment, and impacts the poorest people in the world. It's for this reason that I'm proud of my association as the former commander of the Expeditionary Air Wing, whose Typhoons and Voyagers were launched last night and carried out these strikes. Does the Defence Secretary agree with me that this action forms part of the joined-up international strategy to end these attacks and defend freedom of navigation?
I do indeed, Mr. Speaker. It is part of a longer-term programme to try and degrade the ability of the Houthis to hit international shipping, to defend and protect the freedom of navigation, and also to recognise that conflicts in the Middle East have a big impact on business and on prosperity in this country. And the British Chambers of Commerce recently published a survey that said 50% of businesses in Britain report that they've now been impacted by conflicts in that Middle Eastern region.
Dr. Andrew Moose.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I draw attention to my entry in the register and congratulate all involved in a very successful joint operation. Matters like this are likely to attract retaliation from Iran and its proxies. What is being done to prepare and support our allies in the region against possible attacks? And as Carrier Strike Group 25 prepares to transit and exercise in the region on Operation High Mast, will he assure the House, without going into specifics, that all is being done to protect our men and women?
Mr. Speaker, he's served, I think, in 2 terms as a Defence Minister. He will know the highest priority that Defence Ministers and Defence Secretaries, including myself, give to our force protection. And that was a matter for me and the Armed Forces Minister in detail to go over with our military planners and our military chiefs before the carrier group set sail. And I was briefed again on it when I visited the carrier with the Prime Minister last week. In general terms, Mr. Speaker, this operation last night was designed to prevent further escalation. It was designed to prevent further Houthi attacks by taking out the major weapons manufacturing site, which we struck last night.
Grant Bass.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my right honourable friend for his statement, and would also want to pay tribute to the courage and professionalism of all of our service personnel who were involved in this successful operation. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that this whole House should stand together against the Houthi attacks, which challenge the freedom of navigation and, if left unaddressed, could lead to a devastating rise in the cost of essential food items, not just for my constituents in Paisley and Renfrewshire South, but here across the UK and in other countries?
My honourable friend puts the argument very well. This is a matter of freedom of navigation. It's a matter of international law, but it's a matter of economic self-interest for us in Britain, because the price paid by the disruption to world shipping and this essential trade route through the Red Sea, that price is paid by ordinary people in the food they buy, the goods they depend on, and that is in part why we've taken the action we did last night.
Monica Hart.
Mr. Speaker, can I also pay tribute to the professionalism of our armed forces and thankful for their safe return? Can I ask the Secretary of State, is he confident about the appropriate security for our military personnel, given the previous leaks from the Trump administration on Signal, given details of attacks before they happened, and what reassurances he has had from the United States on this?
Secretary of State.
I am confident, Mr. Speaker. We handle secure communications in secure ways, and we do that consistently here in the UK.
Mr.
Speaker, I join my right honourable friend in paying tribute to the Armed Forces personnel who took part in last night's action.
And the fact that it's us that was supporting the USA in this action really does emphasise the close relationship we have with the USA. But in this morning's papers, it's been suggested that our desire to do a trade deal with America has been pushed back to a second tranche of countries, or maybe even a third. Well, does my right honourable friend share my disappointment at that decision, and would ask that perhaps the Trump administration returns to that issue and considers the close relationship we have both on defence and intelligence?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I would just sort of gently urge my honourable friend not to necessarily believe everything that he's reading in the newspapers. He's very experienced and he's got a very good insight into the political world. Just to reassure him, we are putting out all the stops behind the scenes to try and settle a trade deal with the US, just as we are to reinforce the special depth of the relationship on the security and defence matters between the UK and the US.
Mundell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I very much welcome the statement and the action, which I fully support, and I'm very pleased to hear of the level of engagement by the US. But the Secretary of State will recall that in the previous Parliament, the humanitarian situation in Yemen was the subject of frequent debate and discussion, and it does appear to have just fallen off the agenda, partly because of atrocious conflicts elsewhere. I was pleased to hear what he had to say in relation to the FCDO approach, but will he ensure, as the FCDO has more constrained resources, that Yemen and the humanitarian situation there does remain a priority?
Secretary of State.
I am confident that my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, has that in mind. He will be conscious, as the right honourable gentleman is, that the UK doesn't just act as the third largest donor in the Yemen humanitarian programme, but also the penholder for Yemen at the United Nations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank my right honourable friend for his statement and associate myself with his words about our brave military personnel. Does the Defence Secretary agree with me that we must reiterate how the Houthi attacks are illegal, they're against the UN Charter, and they target the principle of freedom of navigation that all nations benefit from, including our allies in the region, and that our action shows that working in concert with our allies internationally can improve regional stability and security, and indeed our security here at home?
I do indeed agree with my honourable friend. This is a matter of reinforcing regional stability. It's a matter of defending and protecting the freedom of navigation. And it's also a matter of protecting our own economic interests back home. And I make no apology for standing up for British interests and for those of our allies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we at Reform fully endorse the government's action against the Houthis and thank our brave and brilliant military personnel. The Secretary of State referred to the continuing support of the Houthis by Iran, and so could he update the House on further sanctions against Iran? And surely now is the time to prescribe the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organisation.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman has been around long enough to know that I won't comment on the process for prescription of the Houthis. Suffice to say, the government has sanctioned a number of the major leaders of the Houthis, and I hope that he will take, and I welcome his welcome for the action we took last night, and I hope he will take that action as a sign of a determination to do what we can alongside our US allies to degrade their ability to continue to threaten freedom of navigation for international shipping.
Ali.
Mr. Speaker, the Houthis are acting freely in an absence for a roadmap for peace. Yemen is facing the worst humanitarian crisis. 22 people need assistance, of which 11 million are children in desperate need of food, water and medical supplies. To defeat the Houthis permanently, will the Secretary of State give a commitment that his government will do all that is possible to deliver a roadmap for peace, along with allies, to make sure that this happens now? Otherwise, it will be a lost opportunity.
Mr. Speaker, I said to my honourable friend in the House earlier on, the responsibility I have as Defence Secretary is for the military component of a wider approach that must be pursued if we're going to be able to help play an important role in securing peace and a settling the civil war in Yemen and lifting the relief of those hundreds of thousands of Yemenis that are suffering so severely. Constraining the Houthis' threat is part of that. Reinforcing and bolstering the Yemeni government is also part of that, but then working with allies, particularly leading regional allies, in trying to force the pace of a negotiated settlement and a peace in Yemen is absolutely crucial.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the Secretary of State's statement and add my thanks and appreciation to the Royal Air Force and all those involved in this successful operation. Now, in his statement, the Defence Secretary said even Russia has attempted to support Houthi operations. But, Mr. Speaker, isn't it a little bit deeper than that, as the Wall Street Journal has reported that targeting data provided by Russia has been utilised by the Houthis for their attacks against Western shipping, while Iran has arbitrated secret talks between the terror group and the Kremlin. So what steps is the Secretary of State taking to disrupt Russia's deepening ties to Iran and its proxies across the Middle East?
Very good.
Mr. Speaker, I'm really not going to disclose in public or even to this House the steps that we're taking to deal with some of that covert Russian activity that goes well beyond not just Yemen, but obviously the wider Middle East. But suffice to say, he's made a contribution to the discussion this afternoon on the statement by reporting the Wall Street Journal's report to the House.
Speaker, and I add my words of support for the actions the UK took last night. The Houthi group is a terrorist organisation that's been deeply destabilising, and it's right that we're playing our role in protecting freedom of navigation. At the same time, the Hale Zone community of Yemenis are really concerned about the desperate humanitarian situation in Yemen. Could the Minister add a few more words on what we're doing to support Yemenis that are so desperate right now, and what we are doing to help end that civil war?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I mentioned the uplift in year that the Foreign Secretary gave to our contribution to the Yemeni humanitarian assistance plan. It makes us the third largest donor. Our focus for the aid has been especially on food, which is of a critical shortage and necessity to many hundreds of thousands of Yemenis, and we calculate that we will have helped almost 900,000 Yemenis with our food support this year. And our support then is also on healthcare, supporting over 700 medical centres across the country with medicines, vaccines, and some of the basic equipment needed to provide the healthcare that people also so desperately need in that country.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. And may I share in my recognition of the RAF's role in last night's operation. But given the existing global commitments of our Typhoon squadrons, should the Coalition of the Willing provide a military contribution to any post-war force in Ukraine, and therefore a combat air patrol or air policing role in Ukraine, in addition to the Baltic and the High North? How will we continue to facilitate direct action, such as the strikes against the Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen, with no plans to purchase a second tranche of F-35Bs?
Well, Mr. Speaker, on the matter of Ukraine and potentially a role of in the coalition of the willing and security guarantees, if the negotiated peace settlement can be put in place, which we all hope President Trump secures. We're planning at the moment the sort of consequences of any commitments that we make will be fully explained to the House if a decision gets taken. But to say to him, this is contingent on a ceasefire, it is contingent on a peace agreement, and that is contingent principally on Putin to do what he says he wants, which is to see an end to the fighting there.
Alison, you.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Defence Secretary for his statement and pay tribute to all those involved in this successful strike. Does he agree with me that this government will always put personnel at the heart of our defence plans?
For too long, Mr Speaker, I believe the previous government overlooked that. They set and failed to meet their recruitment tests. And I'm proud to have been a Defence Secretary in a Labour government, able to give the Armed Forces personnel the largest pay increase last year for 20 years, and to be the first Defence Secretary who can stand at this dispatch box and say nobody in uniform will be paid less now than the national living wage. And I'm also proud, Mr Speaker, to have managed to do a deal to buy back and bring into public control 36,000 family military homes, the consequence of which was quite the worst privatisation ever in 1996 under that previous Tory government.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In reply to an earlier question, the Secretary of State talked about the devastation in Yemen with 11 million people in desperate need of help and support and the civil war conditions that pertain there. This armed intervention that was made yesterday by Britain, I think we all need to know where it leads to, what the end game is in this. Are we involved in an internal war in Yemen? And what is the long-term implications of our involvement in this? Because ultimately there has to be some kind of peace process in Yemen, just as much as there has to be in Gaza and elsewhere within the region. Does this actually bring peace nearer, or does this actually exacerbate the danger of a widening conflict?
Mr Speaker, the honourable gentleman is right to remind the House of the extreme hardship of many Yemenis in what is a war-torn country and has been for years. The strikes last night were designed to reduce and prevent the risk of further Houthi attacks, and were done because we were able to take out an important weapons manufacturing facility that the Houthis had, manufacturing the very weapons that have been used to target international shipping and our own.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I welcome the Secretary of State's statement today, and I'd like to add my own thanks to our service personnel for their action. I'd also like to talk about the Houthis and what they've been doing alongside the other terrorist proxies in the Middle East, the Hamas and Hezbollah, who are controlled by Iran. Therefore, I would ask my right honourable friend, what is this country's policy in disrupting and containing this network and attacking the heart of it, namely Iran itself?
My honourable friend is right. Iran is a destabilising influence across the region, not just in its own terms, but particularly in the way that it has developed, sponsored, supplied proxy groups. And the Houthis are clearly supplied by, supported by Iran, and part of the long-term ability to see a secure Middle East, a conflict-free Middle East, has got to be a reconciliation that Iran has, that it stops using these proxies in order to threaten both neighbours in the region and the interests of countries like ours.
James Whale.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. US action in recent weeks has considerably degraded ballistic missile and drone attacks, and I welcome these RAF strikes. However, this action will only work if it is sustained. So will the Defence Secretary commit to ongoing UK and RAF direct support to US Operation Rough Rider to strike Houthi terrorists, rather than the ad hoc approach adopted so far, so that we can properly restore freedom of navigation?
Rough Rider is a US military campaign. We took action last night alongside the US, and any future military interventions like last night will be reported to the House.
Steve.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thanks to the Secretary of State for his statement to the House today.
I'd also like to pay tribute to all of our armed forces personnel involved in the action overnight. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that the USA has always been and will remain our most strongest and steadfast security ally?
I do indeed, Mr. Speaker. The US-UK defence relationship has a special depth that has lasted decades. We do things together as two nations that no other nations do. We train together, we exercise together, and at times we have to fight together.
John Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very relieved to hear that the Strategic Defence Review is coming in spring with a great yellow ball in the sky. I assume that's going to be fairly soon, but in all military operations, time is the enemy. And I'm concerned about reports that, in fact, the Strategic Defence Review may only be a broad brush document, an interim document, as it were, and that the decisions and the important decisions on specific capabilities and weapon systems may not be taken until the autumn.
Which autumn?
Are we marching onto war, and if so, should we not be doing so at the double rather than on the slow march?
Very good.
Very good.
Well, the honourable gentleman has managed to broaden out his question from this specific statement on the overnight strikes. I just say to him, look, the Strategic Defence Review is a strategic defence review. It'll be published in the spring. It has been an unprecedented process, externally led, but a process that has allowed us to take stock of the threats that we face, the capabilities that we need, and to do so within the unprecedented increase in defence funding that this government has now committed to over the next 10 years.
Brenda.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, in his statement, the Secretary refers to Russian attempts to support Houthi operations without compromising any of the information he's not able to share. How would he rate the effectiveness of those Russian interventions, and as well as the UK response? And does he agree with me that this shows that we must make sure we continue to support Ukraine in every way we can to undermine the dictator Vladimir Putin?
It does indeed, Mr. Speaker, and my honourable friend has been steadfast from the backbenches as a strong voice for Ukraine, and I welcome his support for the action that the UK government has offered, and our leadership. On the question of the effectiveness of Russian action and interventions in Yemen, I'm more concerned to make sure that any military action that this government sanctions is effective, and that the outstanding military personnel that are involved all return safely. And I'm happy to report to the House that that was the case last night.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 17th of March, I asked the Foreign Secretary why the UK had taken a kinetic role in previous strikes against the Houthis under the last government, but had not taken that active role in those carried out by this government. Now, we've since had those leaked messages from Signal, and the US Secretary of Defence, Hegseth, lamented the lack of European involvement in relation to those 15th of March strikes. How much has the involvement of British jets in these strikes come as a response to the allegation by Pete Hegseth of European freeloading?
The strikes that we conducted last night are as a result of the fact that America, as our closest ally, has been coming under near daily attack from the Houthis. It's a result of the fact that shipping has more than halved through that Red Sea route, and that 50% of UK businesses now say that they've been impacted by conflict in the Middle East. And I say to the honourable gentleman, I make no apology for defending Britain's interests and the interests of our allies.
James Shannon.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Secretary of State very much for his answers and for giving us the comprehensive information that we need. And I wish to congratulate our armed forces and our allies on a successful strike against the facility. Long may those targeted and successful operations continue. Will the Secretary of State confirm what further steps will be taken with our NATO allies? Because quite simply we can't do this on our own, that we need them, to secure the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, and thereby lower the shipping costs and the consumer costs for all of those who are paying the price for the evil actions of the Houthis. Thanks so much.
Well, the honourable gentleman is right to say this is bigger and more important than just UK action or even just US action. And I did report to the House earlier on that the broader discussion, the challenges that he sets out, were discussed by NATO foreign ministers. They've been discussed by foreign ministers at the G7 within the last month.
Right, that completes that statement. We'll now change over for the next. Let us come to the next statement. Minister Rates.
Mr Speaker, with permission, I would like to make a statement on the resilience of the UK's energy grid in the context of the widespread power outages experienced